Hello, library friends. This is Toby with South Charleston Public Library. I'm here today to show you how to make your ecosystems in a jar for our teen craft, take-home craft this week. So you have a jar. You should also have the lid for the jar, a bottle of water, a bag of soil, and this is called sphagnum soil, and it is a organic potting soil of sorts, but it doesn't have any perlite in it. A bag of decorative colored stones, a bag with a plant clipping or two you would have gotten at the library from us, and a little ramekin container of snails. You should have two snails in there. One should be a pink ram's horn snail and one should be a bladder snail. I'm holding it up here so you can kind of see what they look like. And you want to keep the water in this jar because it has a little bit of algae in it, and that's what our snails eat. So just keep that on hand and make sure you add it into your jar at the end. But I'm showing you that the bladder snail has a longer elongated snail, and the pink ram's horn snail, which you can't see very well, has a round ram's horn shaped snail, shell. And so there, and if you look in your instruction sheet, there's a little bit of information about the different species. But basically, they eat algae and they kind of take care of, they act as decomposers in the wild to kind of take care of cleaning up their areas. Okay, and then up next, so you're going to take your little bag of dirt, you're going to shake it down to the corner, and you're going to chop off the corner there. Chop it kind of big because I did it too small to start with and messed it up. So now you're going to shake your dirt down into the bag. And when you're done doing that, you just want to try to keep it up off the sides as best as you can. It's okay if a little bit gets on there, but you kind of want to keep it clean so that you are able to see in your jar very well. And then just tap it down and like pat it flat like that. Okay, so now you're going to take your baggie of decorative stones and you're just going to open that and you're going to place them very gently down into the jar. And just so they cover your dirt. You don't want them mixed in with the dirt. You want them to just cover the top of it to kind of hold your dirt down when you add your water in there in a little bit. So I'm going to do this. And you can watch along and just see how I do it. I'm just kind of patting them down and making sure they're spread out kind of evenly across the soil. Okay. Okay, so now you're going to take your little plant piece. You're going to take the long one for, or if you have a stem plant, which will tell you, but if you have a stem plant, you take the end that doesn't have the pretty growing part on it, and you're going to place that down into the dirt. And that will, there aren't any roots on it now, but it will sprout roots fairly soon. So you're just going to take it and you're going to try to secure it with some of the stones. You want it down in there pretty good, but you don't want to, again, you don't want to stir up too much of your dirt. Okay. So once that's done, you're going to press your stones down. Just make sure everything's nice and even in there. This next part is a little bit tricky. So I'll show you the best way to do that there. Make sure we clean up our work area as we go. Don't want to create too big of a mess. Okay, so now you're going to take the lid off of your little snail jar. Leave it alone. Don't pour anything out of it yet. But you're just going to take the lid and you're going to place it kind of gently into the clear glass jar. Try not to squish your plant. Just place it gently in there. And it's going to act as like a little bit of a buffer for the water so the water doesn't stir up too much dirt. Now, it's important that you use natural spring water or or make sure that any water you're using is dechlorinated. So normal bottled water, anything from municipal source, so water you get from the tap, can contain chlorine and chloramides, and those can be really bad for your snails and can actually harm them. If you have not used those things, or if you don't have spring water, something you can use something like this, the Stress Coat. It's a dechlorinator from the pet store, and you can use that to make water safe for aquatic insects, so or aquatic anything, fish, snails, anything. So we're going to use this Deer Park water here, which is a natural spring water, and you're going to pour it very, very slowly into your jar, because if you go too fast, it will stir up all of the dirt up to the top of the jar and everything will be ugly for a really long time. So you just want to pour very slowly and just kind of let the water trickle into the jar at a very slow speed so you don't stir up too much of the dirt as you go. Now, a little bit of the dirt is going to stir up, and that's okay, but you just don't want like all of the dirt suspended in the water of the jar. So we'll do this for a minute or so. You want to make sure your plant is staying rooted in there. You may need to grab like a chopstick or a toothpick and stick it down again, but you're just going to fill it up pretty much kind of just a little bit short, maybe an inch from the very top of your jar before you add your snails in. So I've left a little bit of space. And the space in the jar is really important to allow air to circulate in the jar as well. So you want to make sure that the oxygen exchange is able to happen. So you need to leave at least some space in your jar. You should not fill your jar up all the way to the lid and then close the lid. Also, a little bit of space will allow if you have any floating plants, will allow them to get light as well. Okay, so now it is time to add your floating plants to the top of your jar. You can do the snails or the floating plants first. That's totally up to you. You can see here we have, it's a kind of duckweed, and it has these little like frond-like roots that you can see. They look like kind of like little green hairs. You can just drop those roots side down into the top of your jar. That's fine. And you might want to consider leaving the lid off your jar permanently in order to let those grow better, because if you have the lid on them, they're not going to get as much sunlight and they're not going to grow as well. But you can do whatever suits you best. If you're worried about like a cat or another animal knocking the jar over, it might be best to put the lid on it. So now it's time to add your snails. Now, very, very carefully, you can see they're kind of on the sides, so they're stuck. And you want to be careful not to just grab your snails by the shell, because you can hurt them. So what we're going to do is we're going to very gently just kind of push them with our finger from the side to get them to move. You just want to go very gently and very slow. You don't want them to get hurt by like you pushing them or squeezing them too hard, because even though they have shells, their shells are actually really fragile when they're this little, and it can be easy to crush them. So be careful with that. You just stick them in there. You can, like I said, if you want to leave your lid on your jar, you can. You put your lid on a jar and make sure you stick it in a very well lighted window. So that's what it's going to look like. You just want, like I said, you just want to stick it in lots of light, a very well lighted window, and give it a few days for the dirt to settle, because the dirt will kind of float up and down over the course of the next couple of days. But once that's done, it should be fine. So if you stick in the window, you should see the production of algae starting to begin. The plants will grow larger, and what they do is they actually clean the water, start using the minerals from where your snail has pooped, and using that as fertilizer, and then also doing the CO2 and oxygen exchange with the plants. So that's pretty much your snails in a jar. Just make sure you clean up when you're done, and we'll see you next time.